So I fell down a gnarly Reddit rabbit hole this week and ended up on the subreddit called Unresolved Mysteries. And then I found a thread called Have You Ever Met a Killer? So I did what any illogical person would do, ditched my responsibilities, and hyperfixated on it for the next 6 hours. And while I was cramming my brain full of all of these real life horror stories, I accidentally learned a really uncomfortable statistic. Apparently, we all walk past 36 murderers in our lifetime. Now, if you're one of the lucky ones, you'll stay blissfully unaware every single time that it happens. But the people in these stories weren't so lucky, and neither was I. During my 35 years on Earth, I've had multiple close encounters with killers and would-be killers, and I decided approximately 5 minutes ago that today is Trauma Dump Tuesday. So stick around if you want to hear some things that I haven't even told my therapist. But we should warm up with a few of these Reddit stories first. Okay, so this story is like one of the reasons I'm not an outdoorsy, like long trip camping with strangers kind of person. I already wasn't, but like, this really just sealed the deal for me. Myself and 6 friends, aged 18 to 28, were on a 5-day river canoe trip up a tributary. I don't know what that is, I'm gonna be honest. A tributary in Venezuela in 1998. Our guides were a rough-looking German guy in his 60s and a slightly younger but shifty-looking Basin Indian. One person in our group knew fluent German, but for some unexplained reason, she didn't share with the guide that she could speak it. She later told us she didn't want the creepy dude making comments to her that no one else could understand. We were 3 days in, roughing it in the hammocks on the side of the river, not having seen a village for at least 8 hours. I'm out. I'm already out. The guides kind of kept to themselves after dinner, which was fine, but this evening they were a bit further away and we could tell they were having a pretty heated discussion in a mix of German and local dialect. Suddenly, the German girl in the group turns white and looks terrified, and it takes us a few minutes to calm her down. She explained she heard the German guy talk about making sure the others would be at the place and they will have crocodiles get rid of the guys. And the girls will go with them to some village the day after next. Nope, I would have lost my shit. We kind of freaked out, but decided that being alone with these 2 dudes, days from anywhere in the middle of the fucking rainforest, we were pretty much trapped. We decided on a plan, which fortunately went our way. Early the next day, we decided that the next time we saw another canoe expedition pass us, we would essentially shout and scream at them that we were being kidnapped and needed help. Fortunately, a 4-canoe group came past and we enacted our plan. Our guides immediately just got the fuck out of there, didn't even protest about our crazy accusations or anything, other than pull out a sawed-off 12 gauge from under a blanket to stop us from chasing them, which actually validated to us that they were planning to kill/traffic us. We got taken to the nearest village a few hours down, where we explained the situation to the local police. Turns out that there was a suspected serial killer operating out of that area, targeting tourists going into the forest, and that had been active since 96. And this was in 98, so a 2-year-long serial killer just chilling in the forest. I've never told my family or my wife. See, here I was worried about not telling my therapist some of my trauma, but this, you're gonna need more than one therapist, I'm afraid. I really don't know what I would do in this situation, honestly. I think they were really ballsy to just start screaming and yelling at people passing by because, number one, how do you know they're gonna stop? Do you jump into the fucking river with the piranhas? Do you take off through the forest and fight God knows what? Probably like anacondas. Don't want none unless you got fun. It honestly sounds like the perfect premise to a horror movie, and I'm not interested. No, thank you. All right, let's do our next one, and don't get your hopes up because it's not any better. In fact, it might be worse. Actually, no, it is worse. It is worse. I had a coworker who was murdered. In fact, he murdered another coworker and slept with her body under his bed for a couple months, the sick bastard. His name is Eric Grumpelt. First of all, Grumpelt, the man has a villain name, and it's Eric with a K. The man was born to be a villain. Google him if you want. There's plenty of news stories. I did Google him, actually. It's terrible. It's gross. I knew them both, murderer and the victim. Our work was very quiet and in shock the day we all heard about it. Actually, for several days, we just couldn't believe it. What really messed me up was that she had been missing for a couple months and nobody reported her missing or thought it was odd for her to just disappear. Work just marked her down as a no call, no show and eventually terminated her employment. No other coworkers attempted to contact her, or if they did try to, they didn't think that it was odd when no one could get a hold of her. And what about her family? None of them noticed she was gone for 3 months and never showed up to work. The entire thing just messed with my head. The only reason all of this was found out was because Eric couldn't live with the guilt anymore and came clean to his dad, who immediately called the police. Part of me wonders if he hadn't done that, how much longer it would have been before anyone started looking for her. See, this is why I always say, and I've always thought, that I'm not going to be married to a corporate job, or any job for that matter, because you could really disappear and die and they do not give a singular fuck about you. All right, so this next guy apparently lived with a serial killer in his basement. I had a serial killer live in my basement for a couple months. Little over 10 years ago, my mom and I lived in an old apartment building with a shared storage space in the basement for the residents. One winter, we found a homeless man in our storage area. He seemed like a nice enough guy, didn't seem to be an addict or anything, so we told him he could stay the winter down there if he wanted to, but he had to be out by spring. We brought him some canned food and toiletries and pulled out an old mattress we had and some blankets. He was extremely grateful and even pulled out an old snow shovel and shoveled the driveway and sidewalk for us. Come spring, he was gone, just like he promised. You know what? We love a man of his word. We love a hard-working, some manual labor, sidewalk scooping, keeping his promises kind of guy. We spent the next few months feeling pretty good about ourselves. I mean, honestly, I get it. Glad we were able to help a guy in a tough situation. Then, a few weeks later, as we were watching the morning news, we hear a story that a suspect in the recent rape and murder of 3 older women in the area had been arrested, and a picture of our former guest pops up. We were dumbfounded. We waited for the police to show up and question us, but they never did, and we never contacted them either, but we should have. My mom was pretty freaked out and just wanted to wash her hands of the experience, but I don't think we were really in any kind of danger. All 3 victims were elderly women who lived alone in relatively isolated areas. A middle-aged woman and a 16-year-old male, I guess that's him and his mom, living in an apartment building in the middle of a downtown is a lot riskier target and not even close to the profile of the previous victims. Still, it was a wild experience and makes for an interesting story. I disagree with the part about him not thinking they were in that much danger because they didn't fit the profile, because there's been a lot of experts that say it's more about opportunity than it is a certain profile. They're sneaky little bastards. That's how they get you. Okay, I know I promised a trauma dump. Kind of regretting that I said that, but now I'm in too deep. Now I gotta do it. It's almost summer here and it's like hot as balls outside, but my personal stories still give me chills. So actually, okay, this is much better. If you want to grab your own emotional support hoodie from my store, I pinky promise, I'll give you plenty of reasons to wear it. Okay, sorry for the side quest. I'm going to tell you one of the stories right now, but the other 2 are really, really personal and make me feel really icky. So I'm not going to tell them on here, but I will tell them on Patreon because I trust that group over there. I don't know who all is watching this publicly. One time years ago, I worked at a children's hospital, which I will not be naming. And I was the manager over multiple departments. And one of the employees came into work one day and he just looked really like pale, or not pale, clammy, I guess is the word. And I could just tell. I could tell he was just like, bleh. And I was like, I don't want that shit. I don't want to catch whatever you have. And so I sent him home. Imagine my surprise when the cops show up later to work and start questioning all of us about his whereabouts, because apparently he had offed somebody with a pew-pew in the parking lot of his apartment complex that morning and then just went ahead and came to work. So when he told me he wasn't feeling good, I guess that murdering somebody made him feel a little under the weather, and I don't think that's contagious. I'm not really sure if he was prosecuted or found guilty, or I don't know any other details, but now I kind of want to know. Damn it. Enough about me. Like I said, I'm gonna put the rest of my shit on Patreon. Okay, next story. When I was a teenager, I had a coworker who was pretty sketchy. She looked like a sweetheart, but I quickly learned that she was impulsive and quick to anger. Luckily, she liked me. She spent hours one New Year's evening curling my hair, and she offered me a job with her old boss, a drug dealer, but it's the thought that counts, right? You know what? She's a girl's girl. None of her stories about her own past lined up, and she told everyone a different story about the massive scar on her neck. Maybe a year or so after the last time I saw her, I overheard an old mutual coworker talking and freaking out about someone he knew who was getting arrested. I asked who he was talking about, and he told me that this girl had stabbed a couple of guys to death and tried to set another one on fire. She had gone apeshit on some poor cab driver and a college professor for no real reason. She had also knocked one of her friends out of his wheelchair. What the fuck? Doused him in lighter fluid and then couldn't get her lighter to work. Well, thank fucking God for that. We found out later that she was found not guilty by reason of insanity. This is why I make friends with the weirdos. Number one, I'm a weirdo. But make friends with the weird ones or the outcasts, and don't bully people and be mean to people because you never fucking know. Another one. Okay, so this one's in attempted killing. So L is the wife and G is the husband. Lord, am I going to remember this? Okay. L and G had been married for quite a few years despite the roughly 15-year age gap, and had moved to Humboldt County, California from the metro metro New York area. She's originally from Bumblefuck, Connecticut. Is Bumblefuck like an actual town, or is that like here in the South we say BFE, Bumfuck Egypt? I had known the husband a long time and the wife since they started dating. So I was living in LA at the time, and she invited me to come move up there for the summer and work at some of the farms and stuff in the area until the harvest. So the husband comes down to get me, which is about a 16-hour drive, and we head back up the same day. We get up to their house at maybe 5:30 a.m. and hung out for a few minutes before we all go our separate ways to go to sleep. Now, let me tell you some back info. G, the husband, is a large, all caps, large, big boy dude. Like 6'4"-ish, does not like cops. Who among us does? After we all pass out, he comes screaming frantically from the bedroom like an hour later to call 911. I look up and he is running down the hall, grasping his neck as I'm watching blood squirt out like a water gun, and am now trying to get him to sit down to ease blood flow, fumbling for my phone, trying to talk to the emergency operator. Blood is all down the hall, all over the bedroom, and trailing out the back door in bloody, smeared footprints. Turns out that the wife had fucking lost her damn mind. I would fucking say so. Yes, correct. She waited for us to pass out, then she hopped on top of him, stabbed him in the neck with a knife, and started trying to saw it off. I'm hitting it. But luckily, he tossed her off mid-second saw pull, and I might have been the next target. I'm still not sure, but I'm so thankful I wasn't, considering she had to walk past me from the kitchen to the bedroom with the knife. Police found her in the park behind the house. She never really tried to run anywhere, bloody knife in hand, hiding in a bush next to the playground. She would be so easy to beat at hide and seek. He had to have 13 hours of emergency surgery and somehow did not divorce this woman until over a year later. He helped put her in a facility rather than prison before he filed papers. To each their own. Who am I to judge? I would have filed like 5 minutes later. So I collected a lot of stories where people had interactions with prolific serial killers or killers in general, like years before they were caught or anyone knew that this was the type of person that they were. And this first one is about Paul Bernardo and his wife Carla, who were called the Ken and Barbie killers. My mom was in her late teens, early 20s, living in the Toronto area around the time that the Scarborough rapists, Paul and Carla, were active. My mom told me that during this time, the women in the area, including herself, were super paranoid about being victimized. One night she was on the subway and a young guy was sitting across from her who she noticed kept staring at her. She felt uncomfortable, especially due to that paranoia, and decided to test her gut feeling by standing up. He stood up too. She quickly sat down and tried it one more time before the next stop. Again, he got up when she did. Eventually, her stop came up and she decided to get off. The guy got off too. She immediately knew something bad would happen. He started following her, and so she bolted. She got lucky as she crossed the middle of the street because a bunch of vehicles passed and he couldn't cross, and then she never saw him again. When Paul Bernardo was caught, she saw a picture in the news and felt chills because he was 100% the guy she saw in the subway. When I saw pictures of his victims, I also felt chills because when my mom was in her 20s, she looked exactly like Kristen French, one of his victims. We still live in the area, and recently he was denied parole. So I actually looked this story up, and yes, he has been denied parole, I think more than once, but his wife, Carla, who was an active participant in all of those crimes, not just against women, but also Carla's younger sister, they raped and ended up killing her. Yeah, she's out free. She's living her little life, just chilling. This one says, John Wayne Gacy picked me up hitchhiking in the early 70s. I had no idea I had been picked up by this psycho until I saw him on the news a couple of years later. That's truly traumatizing. These next two both have to do with Thanksgiving, which honestly makes me kind of happy that my family doesn't talk to me because now I don't have to deal with this type of situation. Have you ever met a killer? This person says, yes, my cousin Brady. Met him at a Thanksgiving family get-together. I didn't have an opinion of him, but less than a decade later, he became a Craigslist killer. Of course, I Googled it and I found out that this guy with these tiny little biceps, I'm pretty sure I could beat him at arm wrestling. Yeah, he was supposed to meet these two people off of Craigslist to have sex with the girl who was 18, I think, and he killed both of them and decapitated the dude. They never found his head, to my knowledge. Just truly horrifying. Craigslist has always been super sketchy, and honestly, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they haven't updated the look of that site probably ever. This one says, I was in a jail cell with Dustin Ray Dixon for a month, the guy from the Thanksgiving Day murder. I had to look him up when I got out to make sure he wasn't lying, but the dude was absolutely crazy. So I put a Goog on it and found out that this guy showed up to Thanksgiving with his family and waited a couple hours, I think. But yeah, he killed them after Thanksgiving dinner with a belly full of turkey. I need a couple things from you before I go on my next Reddit rabbit hole, I need you to tell me what type of rabbit hole I should go down next. It's really depressing doing stories like this all the time, and my other stories that are always about like really dark shit, which I'm a dark shit kind of person. But I think I want to do some that are also like good stories. So yeah, so if you have suggestions on one or the other, send me an email or actually just leave a comment. I mean, I read all the comments anyway. I told you one of my personal stories, and so I naturally expect to hear yours in the comments. So yeah, get to typing. I'll put a few videos here that I think you'll enjoy next, and I'm gonna go call my therapist. I wore my hat like this to the gym one time, and the worker asked me if I was a scissor sister,